Welcome to the English Tales, where every story whispers a little magic and every word weaves a world of wonder. Settle in and let the tales begin. Today, listen to As You Like It by William Shakespeare. Once upon a time, there was a king who ruled over a kingdom. He was kind, religious, and generous. However, his minister was of the opposite nature, cunning, immoral, and selfish. His eyes were always set on the throne, and he constantly sought ways to seize it. The king had a daughter named Rosa, while the minister had a daughter named Shelia. Rosa and Shelia shared a deep friendship and could not even imagine living without each other. They spent most of their time together. Finally, one day, the minister conspired against the king, forcing him to flee, and took over the throne himself. The king decided to leave for the forest with some of his loyal companions. Rosa also prepared to go with him, but before leaving, she wished to meet her dearest friend one last time. She went to see Shelia, and the thought of parting made them both cry. They embraced each other and reminisced about their old days. Thinking about how they would live without each other made them deeply sorrowful. Shelia could not bear the thought of being separated from Rosa. She insisted, "Rosa, no matter how bitter the enmity between our fathers, our bond of friendship will never break. We have always been together and will always stay together. No matter what happens, I will not let you go away from me. If anyone tries to separate us, I will give up my life." In the end, the minister had to give in to his daughter's insistence and allowed Rosa to stay with Shelia. The king, too, accepted this for his daughter's happiness and left for the forest alone. At an auspicious time, the minister was crowned and declared the new king of the land. One day, a very handsome young man arrived in the city. His delicate physique, gentle face, and innocent eyes captivated everyone. Though he was still quite young, he boldly challenged the royal wrestlers to a match as soon as he set foot in the city. Whoever heard of this challenge let out a sorrowful sigh for the young man. Many people tried to dissuade him, but he remained firm in his decision. The mere thought of his impending death made young women weep. Everyone was convinced that his life would be short-lived. The king accepted his challenge and organized a duel where the young man and the royal wrestlers would have a fair opportunity to showcase their strength. On the appointed day, the entire city gathered in the arena. In hushed tones, people admired the young man's courage and silently prayed for his safety. At the center of the arena, he stood fearlessly like a lion, while the royal wrestlers, armed with swords, were eager to behead him. Among the spectators, the king was accompanied by Rosa and Shelia. Seeing the young man's bravery, Rosa secretly admired him. However, she was also deeply afraid that he would not last long against the royal wrestlers. Her heart kept telling her to rush to him, snatch the sword from his hand, embrace him, and take him far away from this place. Shame and modesty brought a flush to her cheeks. She turned to Shelia and said, "Shelia, this is not a duel. It is madness. This young man is recklessly throwing away his life. He doesn't even realize how swiftly the royal wrestlers will sever his head. Stop this fight somehow, or else my heart will stop beating before he even falls to the ground. I cannot bear to witness his death." Shelia understood that Rosa had secretly fallen in love with the young man. Determined to save his life, she stood up and praised him, saying, We have never seen a warrior as brave as you. We honor your courage and valor. The very act of standing fearlessly before the royal wrestlers proves your bravery. Therefore, there is no need for you to fight this duel. Abandon your insistence on battling, or else you will lose your life in vain." The young man replied, "Princess, I have no one in this world. Whom should I live for? That is why I have abandoned all attachment to life and come here for this duel. Once I have made a decision, I cannot go back on it. Moreover, a warrior's word, once given, can never be taken back. So I request you to grant me permission to fight." Shelia turned to Rosa and whispered, "Rosa, I have tried my best to save this young man, but when he himself wishes to give up his life, how can we stop him? The only thing we can do now is watch the duel in silence." A look of agony appeared on Rosa's face. The thought that this young man would die in just a few moments deeply distressed her. The king gave the order for the duel to begin. The royal wrestler swiftly drew his sword, dodged an incoming attack, and countered with his own strike. The young man had already drawn his sword as well. He struck at the wrestler. And then the spectators' eyes widened in shock, and many rubbed them in disbelief. With a single strike, the young man had split the wrestler's sword into 2 pieces. The entire arena erupted in thunderous applause. Seeing the young man's lightning-fast speed and precise attack, Rosa was astonished. The sorrow and pain on her face vanished, replaced by joy and admiration. At the king's command, the Prime Minister stepped forward, patted the young man on the back, and asked, "Young man, who are you? What is your name and where have you come from? Whose son are you? Who gave birth to a warrior as brave as you? We are all eager to know your identity." Everyone present was curious to learn about the young man, but Rosa was waiting for his answer with the greatest impatience. She gazed at him attentively. The young man bowed before the king and introduced himself, saying, "Your Majesty, my name is Orlando. I am the son of the valiant Roland, who was once a respected courtier in this very court. You are Roland's son, the same Roland who was a close friend of the former king." The king asked in surprise, "Yes, Your Majesty, you have recognized him correctly. My father and the former king were deep and loyal friends." Orlando replied humbly, "That is enough, young man. We do not need to hear anything more about you. Perhaps you are unaware of the laws here, or else you would not have dared to set foot within the borders of this kingdom. Orlando, enemies and their descendants are forbidden from entering this land. Those who break this law are crushed under the feet of elephants. Your father is among our enemies. If we wish, we can punish you right now. However, you are still young and naive, so we forgive your offense. But you must leave this kingdom at once." The king announced his decision, glaring at the young man. Meanwhile, upon learning Orlando's identity, Rosa felt immense joy in her heart. After so long, she had finally met someone who was the son of her father's dear friend. She wished to talk to him, to spend as much time with him as possible. But upon hearing the king's decree, she was left stunned. The very man who had taken her father away from her was now separating her from the one she cherished. Her face fell with sadness and despair. Sheila could not hide Rosa's condition from herself. She could not bear to see her friend sad at any cost. So she went to her father and pleaded, "Father, your enmity was with Orlando's father. What fault does he have in this? Is it just to punish a child for the mistakes of his parent? Please, forget the past enmity and forgive Orlando. My daughter, just as a serpent's offspring carries its venomous nature, an enemy's child must also be considered an enemy. He could harm us at any time. Therefore, I cannot forgive any enemy. And since Rosa is the daughter of my enemy, she is no less than a foe to me. I tolerate her only for your sake. Otherwise, I would have exiled her long ago. But now, it seems the situation is getting out of hand. Tell your friend that she must leave this kingdom today itself." The king spoke in a venomous tone. Hearing her father's words, Sheila was left stunned. Until now, she had believed that her father loved Rosa as his own daughter. But today, the veil had been lifted from her eyes. Determined, she said, "Father, what if I refuse to let her go? Then I will order you to leave the kingdom along with her. If you cannot live without your friend, you are free to go with her." The king replied coldly. Although he had asked Sheila to leave as well, he was confident that his daughter would never give up her royal luxuries and comforts for an ordinary girl. But he was mistaken. Sheila had already made up her mind. She would leave the kingdom with Rosa. That very day, as the sun set, the two friends left the palace. They had heard that Rosa's father was living in the Arden forest with his companions, leading a tribal life. Now, he was their only hope. So they set out in search of him. However, they had no idea which direction the Arden forest lay in. Since the path was full of dense forests and treacherous terrains, they decided to disguise themselves. Being taller, Rosa dressed as a man, while Sheila took on the guise of a shepherdess. Along with their attire, they also changed their names. Rosa became Ganymede, and Sheila called herself Aliena. The same princesses who had never set foot beyond their silk carpets, whose feet were always adorned with flowers, were now walking on thorn-filled paths, all because of the turn of fate. As they walked, they crossed the forest and reached the borders of another region. They had been traveling for hours and were now feeling hungry and thirsty. Just then, they spotted a shepherd driving his sheep and goats home. Ganymede stepped forward and asked him, "Is there any place here where we can spend the night? We have come from far away and need some rest." The shepherd was kind-hearted and hospitable. In a humble tone, he replied, "It is very difficult to find a place to stay around here. But don't worry. My home is nearby. You can rest there for the night. I will do my best to take care of you." Saying this, he took them to his home and warmly welcomed them. The shepherd's simple meal felt like a feast to them. They ate to their heart's content, and then lay down to rest. Before sleeping, they discussed their plans for the future. They knew it would take many more days to reach their destination, so they decided to stay in the village for a while, to learn the local language and way of life. This way, they would neither face difficulties in the future, nor risk being recognized. At the same time, they could also gather essential information about the king. After making this decision, they both fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, as soon as they woke up, they called the shepherd and handed him a pouch of gold coins, saying, "We are enchanted by the peace and beauty of this place. We would like to stay here for a few days. But will our presence cause you any trouble?" What trouble could there be?" The shepherd replied cheerfully, tucking the pouch into his waistband. "This house is yours, and I am your humble servant. You may stay as long as you wish. Nothing would bring me more joy than to serve you." After the shepherd left, they got ready and went out for a walk. As they wandered, Rosa noticed her name inscribed on trees and rocks all around. She was astonished. On some trees, there were also verses of love and longing written alongside her name. Rosa immediately realized that this had to be Orlando's doing. One day, she finally saw Orlando on the hills. He looked like a madman, wandering aimlessly, calling out her name in despair. A sigh of pain escaped Rosa's heart, and she longed to rush into his arms, but she quickly suppressed her emotions. This was not the right time to reveal herself. Still, she walked up to him and asked, "Oh, young man, whom do you call out for in this wild forest? Who is this Rosa?" Orlando lifted his gaze and looked at Ganymede. For a moment, he felt as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, no matter how hard he tried to recall, nothing came to mind. He could not even imagine that the very person he had been wandering through the forest calling out for was standing right in front of him. He spoke softly. "Rosa is my beloved. I love her deeply. I roam these woods in agony, longing for her memory." Seeing Orlando's devotion toward her, Rosa was deeply moved. No one had ever loved her so intensely before. She felt an urge to embrace and kiss him, but she controlled herself and said, "My friend, so you are the one who has carved Rosa's name on the trees and rocks here. I can tell you a way by which you can meet Rosa every day." What way could possibly bring me to my Rosa? Orlando asked eagerly. "Tell me quickly, for I am desperate to see her." "Friend, my house is nearby. You should visit me every day. I will pretend to be Rosa and speak to you with love, just as she would. You can talk to me the way you wish to talk to Rosa. This will bring you some comfort. And if God wills, one day, you will surely reunite with your Rosa." Hearing this, Orlando was overjoyed and started visiting Ganymede's house daily. He would call him Rosa, and as time passed, he began to feel that he could not live without him. One day, while Orlando was on his way to meet Rosa, he saw a man sleeping under a tree. Looking closely, he recognized him. It was his brother, Oliver. Orlando was taken aback. Oliver had wronged him in many ways. He had driven Orlando out of their home to seize their father's wealth, and had plotted several times to kill him. Once, he had even tried to burn him alive in a house, but Orlando had managed to escape. Later, Oliver had sent swordsmen to assassinate him. But fortune had always favored Orlando, allowing him to survive each time. After many days, Orlando finally saw Oliver again. However, upon seeing him, his heart filled with hatred and anger. He quietly turned to leave, but at that moment, he spotted a lioness stealthily approaching the sleeping Oliver. Although Oliver had always wished him harm, he was still his brother. Orlando could not stand by and watch him die before his eyes. Without a moment's hesitation, he drew his sword, ready to attack the lioness. Sensing danger, the lioness became alert, and abandoning Oliver, lunged at Orlando instead. She struck him with her claws, wounding him. But Orlando was not one to give up easily. Summoning all his strength, he plunged his sword into the lioness's stomach. Letting out a terrifying roar, the beast collapsed and lay motionless. Meanwhile, Oliver had woken up. As soon as he understood what had happened, he was filled with remorse. Overcome with guilt, he fell at Orlando's feet and begged for forgiveness for all his past sins. Seeing his brother's tears, Orlando's heart softened, and all his resentment washed away. He embraced Oliver warmly. However, Orlando was severely wounded, so he asked Oliver to go and bring Rosa to him. Meanwhile, Rosa and Shelia were anxiously waiting for Orlando's arrival. It has been a long time. He should have arrived by now. The same thought kept running through their minds. Just then, Oliver entered the house, and his eyes immediately fell on Elena. Her beauty captivated him, leaving him spellbound. He stood still, gazing at her in awe. Elena, too, was experiencing something similar. Oliver's strong physique, blue eyes, and charming smile had completely mesmerized her. Rosa stood aside, watching them both. She understood that Elena had found her perfect life partner. She then turned to Oliver and asked him to introduce himself. "My name is Oliver. I am Orlando's brother. A lioness has wounded him. Right now, he is sitting atop the hill, waiting for you. Please come with me quickly," he said, in a single breath. Without wasting any time, the three of them hurried to Orlando. Rosa carefully dressed his wounds. Seizing the moment, Oliver turned to Orlando and said that he had fallen in love with Elena and wished to marry her. Orlando was filled with joy. But suddenly, his face clouded with sadness. In a sorrowful tone, he said, "You are so fortunate, Oliver. The one you love is right here with you. I don't even know where my Rosa is. Will I ever find her?" "So, does that mean you don't see me as your Rosa?" Ganymede teased him. "I talk to you as if you were Rosa and share everything in my heart with you. But no matter how much I try, I cannot see my Rosa in you. Oh, how I wish my Rosa could be with me." Orlando sighed deeply. "Orlando, it's all a matter of perception. If you wish, I can become your real Rosa," Ganymede said, playfully provoking him again. "My friend, why are you joking with me? That could never happen," Orlando replied in a hopeless voice. "Then here, your Rosa is standing right in front of you." Saying this, Ganymede removed the disguise of a man. Seeing Rosa suddenly appear before him, Orlando was astonished. It all felt like a dream. He opened his arms, and Rosa ran into them. Thus, the two lovers were finally reunited. Then, Shelia explained the purpose of their arrival. Oliver was well aware of the king's whereabouts, so he led everyone to him. At that time, the king was dressed in wild garments. His beard and hair had grown long. Even in this appearance, Rosa recognized him instantly and embraced him with affection. Afterward, Shelia introduced the two young men to the king. Seeing the sons of his old friend, the king was overjoyed. His happiness grew even more when he learned that Orlando wished to marry Rosa and Oliver wished to marry Shelia. The very next day, the king solemnized the marriages of both loving couples with proper rituals. As the newlyweds took blessings from the king, a messenger arrived with a letter. The king opened it and began to read, "Your Majesty, a few days ago, I entered this forest with the intention of taking your life. However, here I encountered a saint. His enlightening words and mere presence opened my eyes. The greed and attachment that had led me to rebel against you have now left my heart. I no longer desire power, or wealth. My mind is now completely detached from worldly desires. Therefore, Your Majesty, I wish to return your kingdom to you and spend the rest of my life in devotion to God. I hope you will forgive my unforgivable sins and grant me the opportunity for repentance. Please return and allow this sinner to atone for his mistakes. Your humble servant. This joyful letter filled the evening with even more happiness. The king regained all the joys that had once been taken from him. Thank you for joining us on this journey through words and wonder. Until our next tale, stay curious and keep dreaming.